I am coming up on almost a year since releasing my first ever YouTube video, at least on my main channel. Starting out, didn't get a bunch of views, but some of my very early on successful videos, at least relative to being like a first time, very new YouTuber, was my videos on Steven Crowder because this was when Steven Crowder and his abuse against his wife started coming out, as well as the abuse that he subjected a great amount of his employees to. I think this was after Steven Crowder got revealed to be it was revealed that he was lying about a certain a deal that he made with the Daily Wire, in which he said, it was like a slave contract, but then everyone found out that he was lying about it. He actually would have gotten a lot more money. I believe the amount of money was like 50 million. 50 million is what he would have been offered if he decided to go along with it. But instead, he decided to be a bit of a big baby about it. It really backfired on him. Has been mostly on Rumble now. And his views aren't doing amazing overall. Like, even his YouTube views, I believe, aren't exactly great right now. At least relative to his subscriber base, they're not doing amazing. He's kind of fallen off mostly just due to, the drama itself. Honestly, people just lost a lot of trust in him. And but going on to his Rumble, there's a video by Jose, the YouTuber Jose, in which he talks about Rumble's view count right here, Steven Crowder's fake Rumble views. And basically what the video is about is Jose himself kind of test out how the view system with Rumble works. And I would recommend watching the video itself, but he goes into detail how the view count is not accurate, so you can't really base his success off of that, at least on Rumble. But he has found himself in a good amount of trouble recently. Now, I have this tweet from the source, so this is where I first heard about this. Steven Crowder's ex-employee, Jared Monroe, is suing Steven Crowder for abuse. Candace Owens adds that she has information of spousal abuse as well. Crowder had previously made Jared dress in drag for a sketch where they made out and touched each other in front of children. We'll watch the video in a second. This is from Chud's at TikTok at least, it's not from Jared himself, but still. And this kind of in this tweet at least, very, mashes together two of Steven Crowder's favorite things, which is dressing in drag, which he does a lot, and he's just kind of he's forcing his coworker to make out with him. Abusing coworkers is his second favorite thing, and this is just a great little mashup of the two come together. And as I talked about before, I have covered a lot of the initial amount of abuse that former coworkers were coming out with. The pattern between them is that there are a lot of times that he will have his employees do a lot of embarrassing stuff against their will. I believe I don't know if this comes up in Jared's video, but I know that there was a video that people mentioned about Steven Crowder. It was a weird video of him whipping someone while wearing ashless chaps while the other person was dressed up as a cow. And he did this as a way to be look at these, I don't know, weird to offend the libs or something. I don't know what he was trying to do. I can't find the actual video itself, but this is just a little screen grab of him dressed up as a shirtless cowboy with a BDSM whip, and a guy in a cow costume. It's just really weird. But now we have the video itself, and we're just gonna kind of play some of it out. It's 15 minutes long, but we're just gonna try to
enough is enough.
Get through it.
Enough is enough. This can't go on any longer, and as the famous saying goes, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So, here we go. I'm currently being legally abused and intimidated into silence by a former employer. This has been going on for a while now, and it simply cannot live in darkness for another day. But I am asking for your help to fight back. First, some context. In late October of 2023, to my surprise, I was served these papers. A cease and desist from my former employer. It threatened severe legal action in the form of a lawsuit and demanded I cease communications with my friends. The scare tactics of cease and desist are generally to intimidate, isolate, and eventually devastate. Like most cease and desist, it also demanded that I swiftly provide them written certificate of my compliance. I did not. In the same delivery, I was also served these papers. A Rule 202 petition from my former employer. You can look that up on the internet. I know I had to. These documents were filed with the county court of my former place of employment, demanding that I be subject to an oral deposition under oath for an unlimited amount of time, where they were free to interrogate me on pretty much any private matter that they chose. Also, in this petition for discovery, they demanded that I turn over documents of all communications with more than a dozen of my friends, an unlimited amount of unnamed persons in any form, and over an unlimited period of time. I did not. Now, I did not for a few reasons. Number one, I have seen how this employer handles legal issues, and I knew that once I opened the door to legal abuse, it would never, ever be shut. This is how they operate. In fact, I'm not the only one who's a current victim. My former employer is exploiting the legal system to abuse others right now, all in the darkness, fully knowing that the fear and risks it takes to speak up. This kind of harassment at the hands of the powerful isn't just designed to financially ruin somebody, it's designed to cripple their soul. Now, I wasn't about to put my family on embarking upon a journey down that road. Number two, I was not about to allow the privacy of my personal life, the trust I have with my friends, and the real relationships I have with them to be violated in such an vindictive and abusive manner. It simply was not going to happen. I received the latest article of legal harassment on Friday, March 22nd, 2024. After a month now of litigation, exhausting even the court with relentless amendments to their Rule 202 petition, my ex-employer was finally awarded their request for my oral deposition and any document of communication with my friends that they believe may provide any avenue to sue me or others. As it stands, they await my forced cooperation. I will not. I will continue to fight. Now, here's the big question, is what was their entire reason for this harassment and the basis for their claims? These documents, an NDA. Some more context. I signed this separation agreement, an NDA, containing a strict and very broad non-disparagement clause many years ago. I voluntarily left my job after deciding I could no longer put myself or my growing family through the toxic and abusive work environment I had endured for years. This place was and is to this day a workplace rife with sexual misconduct, degeneracy, and aggression. The things I saw, the things done to me, and the things I witnessed my employer do to others were disgusting, shocking, and utterly indefensible. I have the receipts. This all took a serious toll on my personal health. To the point near the end of my tenure, the work environment had become so toxic that I had to be admitted into a heart hospital. And after many tests, I was ultimately put on anti-anxiety medication. This condition was something new to me. I had no history of it prior to my employment there and have never been treated for it since. Now, when I decided to resign, my wife was pregnant with our firstborn child. It was a terrifying position to be put in, but I absolutely knew that I could not be the husband or dad I was called to be for them in my current state. Something had to change.
All right, so I'm just going to kind of pause right here. There's something I do want to mention. The purpose of an NDA. A lot of times we have been, especially lately when it comes to like big scandals, is that it's used to kind of like silence people. That's not even the main purpose of what like an NDA is supposed to do. What an NDA is supposed to do is that it's supposed to make sure that you don't say anything. Like if you work for a certain company, like if you work for like I was listening to the Sirs about this earlier today, about this situation, and he brought up a really good comparison. Like an NDA is supposed to be used. So say you work at like a software company and you do code. The technology, like the stuff that you did there in terms of like developing like this really innovative computer system, you can't bring to another company. Like you can't reveal the secrets of like what's happening behind the scenes when you if you were to go and uh work for like the competition. It's just so to make it. It's just so like a company can share their like can keep their more like technical secrets in terms of like what goes into their product. But a lot of times that we have seen it, it's used, especially like I said, in large scandals recently. We see it a lot of times to cover up sexual misconduct. The first thing that comes to mind recently would probably be like the Vince McMahon situation. Or this also kind of goes into sexual misconduct a little bit. But it's also kind of like situations like this of kind of like keeping, hush hush secret. Like we know we did some pretty gross, weird stuff, and we're going to have you sign this NDA in hopes of scaring you to not talk about it. Because the thing is that now I'm no big city lawyer, but I'm pretty sure NDAs in that front, it's very hard to reinforce them, except for the whole thing being like mostly the people who give them out and force people to sign them are very big, like they're very rich, they got a lot of money, they got a lot of influence, and they use it to kind of keep people quiet, mostly out of fear. It's a fear tactic for the most part. I mean, Eden Ross has openly said that he forces, I think, almost every woman that walks into his home to sign an NDA, which is very, very sketchy, to say the least. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know if that's very legally permissible, but at the end of the day, if he did decide to take it to court, he's going to be able to have a better chance just from the fact that he'll be able to, that he very likely could just continue to fund lawyers to keep the case going. Well, more than likely, the women on the other side of that just wouldn't be able to, in terms of like paying for lawyers to combat Aiden. Like they're more than likely going to run out of money before Aiden does. So they're more likely to lose the case because that's how, or at least like to settle. Very much it kind of spells a loss for them. And that's very similar to what's like happening here with at least not with this situation, but with kind of with this situation too. But especially with Steven and his wife Hiliary. There's this tweet right here. This is Gerald, who is like a co-host of Steven's, and he kind of like was spilling out a lot. This is like we'll watch this later. This was like the episode that came out recently that he was hosting because Steven did not have the balls to actually address all this stuff himself. And he shows a lot of like evidence in terms of like trying to discredit Hillary and Jared. And he brings this up. You may have seen these public claims about hardship. In fact, Hillary is paid $25K a month by Steven. And these are tweets that Hillary has sent out. Seeking opportunities, looking for work that is remote with flexibility. I am open to anything, particularly work that will allow me to be present at home with the twins. Thank you in advance to anyone who's willing to help me. Pursuit by sharing this post. I look forward to bringing my diligence, hard work ethic, creativity, ability to think outside the box into whatever work environment I end up in. I know I may get ripped apart in the comments given I am the mom of 2 small children. Please be respectful and know that the plan was for our children to have a stay-at-home mother, but unfortunately I have been in a position where this is no longer possible. And the reason why I bring this up is that despite the fact that she is supposedly getting $25 a month, as we see with like this little document here, the judge in the divorce proceeding ordered that LWC has to pay me $25,000 per month. The fact is, and this is something that community notes, for once in their life, giving us something helpful, Steven Crowder is not paying Hillary Crowder $25,000 in child support. Their divorce case has not been finalized yet. The amount of money is being paid to Hiliary by LWC as part of a separate lawsuit and only until the divorce is finalized, according to the quoted tweet. So yeah. It's not even until it's finalized, which it's not yet, and that's because of the lawsuit going on. And the reason why I bring this up, and because Tim Pool also brings this up, they're trying to use this to discredit her, despite the fact that the $25,000 a month, even if she was getting it, it's still not going to help her compared to Steven, because while she's getting that amount of money, Steven is worth a lot more than that. He has a lot more than that, and he can pay to continue the court process. He can continue throwing money at his lawyers to help him with this case when she doesn't. Like, she's, from my knowledge, has been a stay-at-home wife for a good amount of time. She doesn't exactly have the amount that Steven does. So not only does she have to probably spend a lot of that $25,000 if she were to get it on lawyers and that's more than likely going to run up before Steven's ever will. But we'll kind of get back to this because Tim Pool has something to say about this, because of course he does.
And if I couldn't change my work environment, then it was time for me to remove myself from it. I was fully aware that willfully resigning would mean I would forfeit any sort of severance. I trusted that God would provide. What I had not anticipated is how much it would cost me to quit. This is where my first experience with legal abuse began. Starting from the day I delivered my notice of resignation, I was put on the phone with company lawyers, and the good cop, bad cop coercion campaign to get my signature on an NDA was well underway. I was told many lies throughout this process. I immediately hired my own legal counsel, and by the grace of God, understanding my predicament, he even agreed to work for half of his normal rate. Even so, the legal fees immediately began to pile up.
Yeah, and this is what I'm talking about. Even though there was a lawyer who was willing to work with him for half of his normal rate, he was still not able to really. He was still very much suffering financially, because of course he would, especially against someone who saw a $50 million deal as a slavery contract. Like this, and that doesn't mean he's still probably getting paid a lot. Like, he still probably has a lot of money. Probably not as much now because views are dwindling down, but still comparatively to someone like Jared, who is just an employee of his, definitely not getting paid as the same amount as Steven, and his wife, who, probably wasn't working for a long time. As she said, they were preparing for her to be a stay-at-home mother. They're not going to be able to afford lawyers for this the same way that Steven could, which is going to make it a lot harder for the legal process, to the part where they're just probably going to lose just because they don't have enough money.
My former employer and his attorney argued I could not work in media anywhere in the world, and most certainly not in the United States, for 2 years. This is not because I had voluntarily signed some sort of non-compete in my original employment agreement. It was because they decided a non-solicitation clause that was in said original agreement would retroactively be interpreted as the broadest and strictest non-compete one could draft. They told me my Twitter account, another potential lifeline to future work, which I had owned and been the sole manager of since 2009, was to be turned over to them on the argument that it was somehow their intellectual property now.
What the fuck?
Presumably to keep me from working even further, my former employer even tried to claim my personal production equipment, gear I had owned for years prior to working there as company.
Yeah, this isn't really surprising to me. This was the same, because this is basically the same guy, Steven Crowder, who I forget who it was. It was one of his former. It was that employee who worked with him, who he had a button for whenever Steven decided that he was talking too much on the broadcast. He would have a button that would shut him up, that would have a light go off that was supposed to signal to him to shut up. I believe his name was Dave. I believe because I believe they called it the "Shut Up Dave" button. I'm not sure, but like, I remember that guy talked in an interview saying that like Steven called him up and was being like really rude to him and basically said something along the lines of "I own you." I might be misquoting. It's been a while. It's been almost a year since like these original claims came out, but I believe it was some. Even if he didn't say that verbatim, like verbatim, he said something very much along the lines of it. I'm pretty sure. But even if it wasn't, those exact words, his behavior was very in keeping of that kind of mentality.
Company property. After producing every receipt to validate my ownership, a vicious lie that I stole from the company was born and disseminated by my employer. By the way, breaking their side of this bogus mutual non-disparagement agreement. I have those receipts as well. All I simply wanted to do was peacefully leave. It was clear by my employer, though, that this was not only unacceptable, but that I needed to be punished for doing so. Being bullied on each of these terms and many more, fighting for my basic freedoms to leave and provide for my family, immediately sent me into legal debt. I did not want to sign anything, mind you. But the negotiations with my former employer left no question that without a signed NDA, my guaranteed silence, I would undoubtedly be harassed well into the future. No matter if there are future claims against me for where I worked or what I did or what I said were legitimate or not, it didn't matter. It would cost me thousands and thousands to fight back, and they knew that. I had to make a deal with nothing but a small savings account and my last paycheck. I had to accept the deal I could afford. It's very important to note here that, where is it? It's here. I was not paid a single dollar for its consideration. Which brings me to what you might be asking next. What was the reason I did sign this? And again, as a man with his first child on the way, the small victory I got from it. The primary reason I signed the NDA was for a small carve-out in the non-compete clause, which allowed me to freely seek employment using some of my skill sets at another specific company. At least I could feed my family. That provision, however, was a lie. And upon starting my new job at the new said company, I was giving another one of these, a cease and desist.
Just, God, like, it's just disgusting. Because, like, here's the thing. With this sort of situation, with his whole, like, non-compete clause, you're basically telling that person you are not allowed to make money. Because I'm not sure what his wife does for work. Maybe she doesn't. Maybe she is a stay-at-home mother as well. At least from how he is talking about it, that seems like how it comes across. Even then, you're still relying on one person to bring home money. And even then, like at the time, she was pregnant, so it's not like she could have been making money either, because she was pregnant. Even if she had a job, she was more than likely on maternal leave. But even then, I feel like he would have stated that. But still, like, you're basically telling someone who has a pregnant wife and who had more children after this, I believe, you're not allowed to make money. For, I believe he said it was 2 years. Just such a insane offer.
And was promptly, unlawfully terminated from that position. I added thousands more to my legal debt trying to fight back. My wife was very pregnant by this time, and without a financial safety net for groceries and a baby crib, much less a legal fund to file a countersuit, I simply had to let it go, trusting God had a plan. To that point, I want to say that I'm happy to report that he did have a plan, and what was intended for evil, God used for good, and it took me years to pay off my legal debt, but the story of God's faithfulness in my life became a very large part of my testimony, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunities that he gave me And yeah, it's a story for another day. But back to this. While my supposed non-compete expired after 2 years, unfortunately, the most egregious part of my NDA, the part that silences my free speech, has no expiration. While NDAs are classically used to protect trade secrets, unfortunately, in the entertainment industry, they are too often used to protect disgusting, unlawful activity and many forms of abuse. We see examples of this all the time.
Yeah.
Powerful people and their attorneys routinely use NDAs to silence victims in order to remain powerful people. Free speech matters.
It is kind of ironic. I mean, from like, having people like Steven Crowder, who is very much, on the right side of politics, the far right side of politics, being like, no, you had to, being all about like, oh, free speech matters, and then having his employees sign an NDA just because he wants to leave. Like, it's very ironic. What these people claim to care about, but also don't care about it at all. And I mean, we saw that with Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens recently, about the Daily Wire, her being let go because she was being pro-Palestine, despite the fact that there were claims that they did it because she was being like anti-Semitic, despite the fact that Candace Owens has had a long line of anti-Semitism even before being hired by the Daily Wire.
Matters a lot to me, and that's not just a t-shirt slogan. It really matters. And these kinds of NDAs right here, stemming from this, are unquestionably unconstitutional. I will not live with the burden of this unconstitutional NDA over my head for the rest of my life, especially when information I have can be used to aid other victims escape their own abusive situations, which is the context for which this former employer feels they caught me breaking my agreement. Let me be clear, what I'm afraid of is legal harassment in perpetuity, not the truth. Only one side of this ordeal is spending a fortune to hide truth and punish anyone who dares speak up for themselves or other victims. While I will not give in to the harassment by my former employer, I have to recognize that this process has already become unbearably expensive. Not only because of the general expense of the legal process, but because my former employer has seemingly unlimited wealth and resources to gleefully spend punishing powerless people.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking about beforehand. Like, people like Crowder can just throw money at this problem until it goes away, until like his well dries, I guess is a good analogy for that. Like, he can throw as much money to these lawyers to make sure that people like Jared don't win their case until his money dries up, because he's not as rich as Crowder. He doesn't have the resources that Crowder does. This is what we see time and time again. And it's why I mentioned earlier with like other instances of NDAs being used this way. There's different layers than just who wins the court case at the end of the day. Like, obviously, positions of power are going to change that. And because of this, he has had to start a GoFundMe, which has been pretty successful. They're almost to their goal of $100,000 for this legal campaign. Obviously, I wish for the best for him. I hope that, he wins at the end of the day, because Steven Crowder has just showed time and time again that he is an absolute, just disgusting guy, with other disgusting people backing him up, like Tim Pool, which we see here. We'll talk about the actual video in which Steven's crony, Gerald, as I mentioned earlier, replaces him because Steven's too much of a coward to actually talk about this himself. But yeah, Tim Pool has been backing up Crowder big time, which to me is just weird. Tim Pool makes a lot of weird decisions lately. I mean, he makes a lot of weird decisions all the time. But with this one in particular, this one's just really weird of why he's even getting into this mess. But he's a culture vulture, so it shouldn't be that surprising. And not the way that it's sometimes used. I mean, like in a culture war vulture. But yeah, this was the tweet that I mentioned earlier about Gerald saying that Hiliary was paid $25K a month by Steven, despite the fact that she's not getting that money right now because the divorce is not finalized. But this is what Tim Pool had to say. Crowder has to pay $25K in child support that his ex-wife uses to pay lawyers to go after him. He has to fund his own destruction. How fucked is U.S. divorce court? This is something that I find really this is one of many things that I find incredibly disgusting when it comes to these right wingers bitching about divorce court. It's because they just don't like the idea of women being allowed to leave if they just aren't happy with the relationship. And then Tim Pool got subtweeted by Lauren Southern, who really just kind of went into him with his tweet of being showing how wrong he is. Yes, he's launched extraordinary litigious lawsuits against her and family that she cannot afford because she quit her job to be a stay-at-home mother. He also then went for full custody of the kids, but thankfully she was awarded some funds to prevent herself from becoming homeless and having her children taken. If you understood how much he's spending on lawyers, you know she's spending every cent of that defending herself. Should stay-at-home wives be able to have their children taken from them and left homeless if their husband is extremely wealthy? Or should they be giving a sliver of the money their husband is spending on lawyers to defend themselves? This is very much true. Yeah, this kind of goes back to my whole thing, this should very much be the case. I don't think just because one person in a relationship is making a bunch of money, especially with this situation where she was going to be a stay-at-home mother, so it's not like she had a lot of her own money to spend, and her husband's making a lot being a fucking, right-wing grifter. This shouldn't be she should be giving some of that cut. That way she can at least provide for herself. But, they don't agree. And we got another, subtweet from Tim Pool. Crowder's rich, therefore he has to fund his legal opponent. And if he's funding the mother of his children, so she's not homeless. And if Crowder was poor, the argument that because Crowder has money he is required to pay his legal opponent is too communist for me. It's all about communism at the end of the day. Anytime you sue anyone, it's a war of cash. This isn't unique. It is, which is why Crowder would more than likely win. This is... You're proving her point with that last one. Yes. She made the point of, every dollar would go to paying legal fees, which is true. Which is why Crowder doesn't... Which, I don't... is he that dumb? Yes, that's the answer. And we also have this, clip from his show where he talks about it. I'm not planning on watching a bunch of it, but we might as well watch some of it.
It's big news. For those that aren't familiar, Steven Crowder was accused of wrongdoing by a former employee, Jared Monroe, who raised, as of this morning, $72,000 in for legal bills.
Steven, who the fuck is this guy? He has a brick wall suit on. Make America Great Again hat. What the fuck? Who the fuck is this guy? This is, oh my god. Just looking at just these two guys alone, as well as this just looks like the panel of divorced dads. Just if there was an Illuminati of divorced dads, these would be the key members.
Crowder, prominent conservative streamer, has filed a lawsuit accusing Jared Monroe and Hiliary, his, I believe it's his current wife. I think they're not yet.
Yeah, the divorce isn't finalized.
Of an extortion scheme. Here's a quote from Jared Monroe. "I just don't want Steven Crowder anywhere near those kids."
Which, I mean, how can you blame him for... Which, that is true. There is a text where Jared does say that. And here's the thing. These guys look at that and are just oh, it's a deep-seated scheme. They're trying to get him. What he's referencing to, more than likely, is the behind-the-scenes stuff that he's seen Steven do that is widely inappropriate, or it's the Ring camera footage, even the stuff after the Ring camera footage that both Hiliary and Steven confirmed, where he was being very verbally abusive towards his wife. Literally, it wasn't shown in the Ring camera footage because it was inside the house where the camera wasn't focused on. It was focused on the outside. But both Hiliary and Steven confirmed that Steven said something along the lines of, "I'll fuck you up." Yeah, I wouldn't want someone like that near my kids. Someone that, like, in even with the Ring camera footage, someone that, like, abusive, manipulative, and easily hostile. Why would you want that person around your children? Or around any kids? Not even, like, again, these aren't, he's talking about Steven's kids. He's like they're not my kids, but I still wouldn't want Steven around them. Like, still, like, I wouldn't want Steven around any kids because he'll probably dress in drag and make out and force his employees to make out with him. All right, let's go back to this.
In a text message to Hiliary Crowder. Now, I will state again for anybody who's just tuning in, it is in fact a slow news day. So welcome to the biggest stories we have of the day. I do think this is an interesting story because it plays into, we're dealing with the alternative media landscape, which we don't talk about quite the independent media landscape. We are standing, my friends, on the precipice of what media may look like for the next 100 years. And you have no opportunities in that with, say, like NBC or ABC. Like, you're not going to go to ABC and say, change everything you do and do it my way. But with independent media, we are all standing here as personalities on X or Instagram or commenting on YouTube. And actually, we are laying the groundwork for what this media environment will be because we know the corporate press is dying. I certainly think that is a good reason to take the time periodically, even if it is a slow news day, to address these stories and figure out what's going on, because this story with Crowder has actually divided people, with many conservatives saying Crowder's wrong, he's a bad guy, he's abused his staff, and others saying that his ex-wife seems to be engaged in an extortion scheme to try and force a settlement.
Yes, you have either the at least somewhat sensible conservatives versus the brain broken ones that think that just don't understand context or human emotion, I guess, and think that Steven is the good guy. So, kind of fitting into Tim Pool a bit.
That would be more favorable than the courts would actually allow.
Because here's the thing,
right now,
and when I call Tim brain broken, I mean, it's for many of his, like, stupid brain broken, like, beliefs. He constantly grifts off of being like, there's going to be a World War III coming, being like, there's going to be a new World War, or like a Civil War. Like, he constantly goes off of that grift. I also say this because, like, to me, this is like a dumb, sensible, like, this is a very dumb position for Tim Pool to, like, make, because he's very much a grifter. I don't think this would necessarily be the best grift, honestly. And, I don't want to help this guy out, but it's not like he's going to watch my video at all. But, like, why wouldn't he go for, like, probably like a more sensible take with this? Like, the only way you could ever side with Steven on this is if you're incredibly brain broken. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving a little bit too much credit to, like, the average conservative, but I don't even feel like the average conservative would see this situation and side with Steven. Like, especially after, if you were to show them the Ring camera footage and shit like that. I don't know. This is just a weird position to take.
The gist of it is what I gave you. SCNR has the story. According to court filings, Steven has been ordered to pay Hiliary $25,000 per month in support for the last 2 years.
Which isn't true, as we talked about before, because the divorce isn't finalized. Which he even states himself in the beginning of this video, the divorce isn't finalized, so obviously she wouldn't be getting that money. That's what she would be getting paid if it was finalized, and probably what she will get paid when it does, but that doesn't come till after the lawsuit.
However, in a recent social media post seeking employment, she claims she could no longer afford to be a stay-at-home mother. Reason being, she has to pay a separate lawyer because she's now being sued over this extortion scheme. I believe it's what's happening. So this is where we're currently at. According to Steven Crowder, his wife, I guess, I don't know, we would say ex-wife, but they're still in the process of being divorced, said that he wanted to put together a PR strategy of some sort. They brought on a PR guy. It really does look, in my opinion, I'm not saying Crowder's innocent or a good guy, but it does look like his wife orchestrated this whole thing, or her dad did, with former employees who are disgruntled to launch a PR campaign that would damage Steven Crowder's business, Louder with Crowder, so that she could get a favorable settlement. In some of these messages that are published, I think it might be this one, she says, when it came to the children, his offer was, I get all of June, some of July, and 2 weeks in August, and a week in the fall, And while that's better than what I would get in court, I want more freedom than that. So here's the current. I don't know what else to add to it. I mean, I'm curious as to who you guys think is in the right or wrong on this one. And welcome to what we have for the day, I guess.
It's the whole thing is
Yes. Let's ask an entire, like I said, the Council of Divorce Dads here. Let's have them defend the most ridiculed divorce dad of the current times.
For the day, I guess.
It's the whole thing is commenting on these things kind of sucks. But like, look, if you're going to be paying alimony and paying for someone else's essentially life, it's really rough to be like you have to pay for them to pay for a lawyer to sue you and try and take your kids away.
Well, so I think Crowder is suing Hiliary for the extortion scheme, and she has to defend herself. So, Stephen, here's what.
But how could you look at that situation? Because he is not on Hilary's side with this. But how could you look at that situation and then blame her for using that money, which she's not even getting? Like, I just hate how Tim Pool always tries to make himself seem like this intellectual when he's just as dumb as a lot of his constituents on the right, like Steven.
Here's what they've said. Steven Crowder is in a divorce proceeding, and the Crowder estate has to pay all the legal fees for both sides. Separate from that, Crowder was ordered to give his wife $25,000 per month. She is using that on legal fees because I believe Crowder initiated a suit against her for launching a PR campaign, an extortion campaign.
In order to influence the final judgment in her favor.
In the divorce court.
Right.
And so now because she has to hire lawyers for that separately from divorce, she's now saying she can't afford to be a stay-at-home mom because all that money is going to legal fees. I personally think, in the bigger scheme of things, it is insane that Crowder is being forced to pay legal fees that are being used against him.
I said this before. This just very much shows Tim Pool's stupidity. He lays it all out to where anyone seeing this who has like a sensible worldview would look at that and be like, well, yeah, it makes sense why she would be, reaching out for income. It makes sense that she's obviously in the right for this, but he's still like, nah.
She should not be allowed to, in my opinion, and we got a couple conservative women are telling me I'm wrong. The idea that the state would compel a man to pay his wife money for child support that she would then use instead for legal fees after she got sued, to me sounds...
How else is she supposed to pay for it? Stephen? No, it's not even Stephen. Timothy? How else is she supposed to pay for it then?
But she wouldn't have to use those for legal fees if he wasn't suing her, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So whose fault is it?
The issue is, I suppose, in the end, who was at fault? Considering where they currently are in the suit, I don't think Steven Crowder's lawsuit is without merit, in which case it appears on the surface, and I don't know anything about these people, his wife did wrong, he sued her over it, and now she's using child support to pay the legal bills. So Crowder's effectively funding the legal challenge against him. This is just insane.
I mean, I don't know all the particulars here. Obviously, there's a lot of nuance that you could probably dig through. But, I mean, my parents were divorced. My wife's parents are divorced. Both of us just have a really nasty view of people that get divorced. And when I see stuff like negotiating about when you can have your kids and I'm going to have them for this time and this time, it's just like it's really aggravating for me because it's just I don't understand why people that get married end up acting like children. I understand. It gets really complicated, but I just have a lot of contempt for people that can't just work their stuff out.
I fucking hate this guy. And this is coming from someone who is a child of divorce as well. I would rather like this. I feel sorry for this guy's wife. Just starting off there. It's like relationships get messy in all sort of ways. Friendship, whether they're friendships, marriages, shit like that. Nobody knows what the future is going to look like when they get married. And relationships are tough. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. That doesn't mean we should get rid of... It's just so dumb. These guys' like viewpoint on divorce. Just being like, oh, if you're going to get divorced, just don't get married in general. It's so dumb because no one can see the future. And sometimes you can tell if a relationship is bad just from the beginning. But that doesn't mean that we should get rid of divorce. Or that... Because that's what they want. Because they're not saying that people shouldn't get married. They want people to get married. They just want to get rid of divorce.
For the sake of their kids. That drives me
And
crazy.
And Stephen and Hillary's kids are young, right? They're not.
Exactly.
And that's also an excuse that I just don't care for. Oh, just think about, like, oh, they should keep it together for the children. I am so glad my mom divorced her ex-husband. I am very glad she did that. Because she is a lot more happier now with her current partner. It's been a couple years since then. She's been a lot more happier. It's been better to be around her than it was when they were together because it was just miserable. They were arguing all the time. You know, it was just a bad environment. I'm glad that she did it. It makes me happier knowing that she's happier. So this whole do it for the kids is bullshit. Because while it does, you know, if it was like when I was younger, and here's the thing, she also ended up divorcing someone when I was younger too. And it definitely did become messy because we weren't financially stable at the time. And we ended up living with my grandparents. But even then, I do believe I would have, like, I'm in a better position now than I would have been if she was forced to be with this person that she just couldn't see eye to eye with, just couldn't stand anymore. Like, I probably would have been in a worse off position because home life, it would have definitely affected my home life a lot more. It's better to have it's better to have a parent who is genuinely happier with their existence because they don't have to deal with a person that they just can't stand anymore than force two people to stay together for no good reason.
Exactly.
They're not. Like
that's my
adolescents.
understanding. Yeah, and that makes it extra painful to listen to this unfold.
So we had this big story the other day where the former employee of Crowder came out and said, I'm being legally abused and, you know, I need money for my legal defense and all that stuff. And my former employer did this, my former employer did that. It was crazy to me because the fundraiser, you know, it raised at the time, I think $72,000. Actually, let me see if I can pull it up and see what the current number is at. Let's see. Here we go. It's currently at $78,000. So what struck me as odd right away, and I don't know this guy, okay, like, you know, and people are like, Tim's friends with Crowder, so he's defending him. Like, dude, I've talked to Crowder a dozen times the entire time I've known him in you know, what, like 8 years. No, I don't have regular communication with Crowder at all. But he said that he's under this.
But you're constantly on his dick.
But the video fundraiser violated the NDA in a whole bunch of different ways. So I'm like, something doesn't add up. If he's clearly willing to violate the NDA and disparage and release private information about the business operations, he clearly doesn't care about the NDA. So what is the money for? I mean, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. And then you have this.
What? What is the money for? God, he's so fucking stupid. Let's just go back. Let's have him repeat what he just said.
The entire time I've known him in you know, what, like 8 years. No, I don't have regular communication with Crowder at all. But he said that he's under this restrictive NDA, but the video fundraiser violated the NDA in a whole bunch of different ways.
He literally says in the video, I don't care about this anymore. Like, I want to fight this. I want to fight this abuse. He also calls it unconstitutional. Like, he doesn't really fully believe. Yeah, he doesn't agree with the NDA. To him, because it's true, it's definitely another form of abuse, which is why he's fighting against it.
So I'm like, something doesn't add up. If he's clearly willing to violate the NDA and disparage and release private information about the business operations, he clearly doesn't care about the NDA. So what is the money for? I mean, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. And
for legal fees. It literally says here, Monroe Family Legal Fund.
And then you have this quote from Crowder's lawsuit where Jared said, I just don't want him anywhere near those kids. That really, really disturbs me.
I think there's a scenario where, I think I think there's a scenario where several of us will be willing to attest to all that. Just trying to get some extra, just extra context here. Any scenario where Hiliary and I team up is the end of him, is his worst nightmare. Watch real fear enter his eyes when Tim asks the question.
That one really pissed me off because I'm like, do people realize they're donating to a guy who's trying to take his kids away from him? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, which is good because Crowder is obviously a very disturbed and abusive individual.
that's between the divorce court. A former employee who's pissed off about a business dealing, intervening and saying, "I don't want that man to have his children." That one pisses me off.
Do you think this Jared character thought that he was skirting the NDA by not naming Crowder in that
No way.
video? You don't think so?
No way. Like anybody
Yeah,
who's
he even says, I don't know, maybe you should actually watch the video. I mean, I think they probably weren't even aware of this until Tim brought it up. But like, Tim definitely saw the video, right? So either he's lying or doesn't remember that properly. Probably the former. But it's just like obviously there's more context to what he said of Crowder shouldn't have his children than just him being angry at him.
spent a second in court knows the judge gives you that eye and says, like, don't play games. And there's no way this guy has a lawyer that he needs to pay who didn't explain to him by saying wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you have violated your NDA and the non-disparagement and non-disclosure. So I got people hitting me up and be like, no, Tim, Crowder's a bad guy. This proves it. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like,
I think that just says a lot about you then. If you're not willing to see it.
coming out and being like, I don't want him to have his kids is a dark thing to say. Seems like, yeah, it seems like it's, I'll keep it simple, I suppose. None of this should be public, I guess.
Yeah, this is not a topic that I follow, but even just in a couple last days, it's percolated to the level that I've seen it. And now other people are arguing about it. I'm like, what's that crazy woman's name? Pearl?
That's her.
Crazy woman's name. Well, now it is.
Look, I have her. I put her on mute on the media.
Oh my
that I'm on. I
God.
put her name on the blocked list of terms, and I'm still seeing posts about her. And now she's coming at people who are,
Well, she was right about this. When the Jared thing came out, she
Even this, I guess he's supposed to be the Trump wall. This Trump wall cosplayer. Even he is tired of pearly things. Who I did see in Tim's initial subtweet did comment. I have been trying to tell you guys, if Pearly Things is on your side, you're wrong. She is a fucking brain dead moron.
tweeted, I bet this is all being orchestrated. Well, I shouldn't say she's right, but she was right about Crowder's perspective. She's like, I bet this was all his ex-wife orchestrating this. And then Crowder puts out a bunch of files where it like really does, like, I mean, look at this. You have this big long message from, I believe it's his wife's dad saying, here are the goals I have for this. Someone who understands and can, Stephen and the world and the things that would destabilize.
Yeah. They understand right-wing media. They are familiar with who Stephen is in that world and the things that would destabilize him, or will commit to investing the necessary time, thoughtful consideration, judgment to become significantly familiar with that world in order that they become intellectually and emotionally invested in Hilary's circumstances. They are experts on narcissists. Who is they? The type of team I want. They are experts on narcissists and or will read and view selected articles to fully understand the narcissism and the impact on the spouse of a narcissist. They have a personal interest in me in my case. None of this is necessarily, I'm going to be honest, none of this is necessarily really damning, because obviously when you're in a legal battle with someone, you should want experts on your side to help you argue the case you're trying to make. This isn't they're trying to spin this into being like, oh, look how evil she is. Look, like anyone would do this in the same circumstance. Like they try to make this out like it's some sort of ploy, But if you're violent, like if you're in a legal battle with someone and you're trying to prove certain things about them, you want experts who are experts on that certain topic that you're accusing this person of being to help your case. Why is this? Why are they trying to make this seem like it's damning when this is something that anyone would really do? Like this is smart. This is a smart legal proceeding. Like you don't just want to get some, just average Joe who doesn't know anything about this. You want someone who's an expert in it.
Lies him. Fully understand that Hilary's goals and expectations for the outcome of the divorce are reasonable and attainable, not necessarily according to Texas family law precedent, but by employing a media Brian Friedman PR strategy that will significantly threaten his public persona and brand. I got to tell you, like, I'm biased. I'll tell you my bias right now. We have had I've talked to a bunch of people who have been run successful businesses, and everybody who does has the same story where it's like you get stabbed in the back by 100 different people. And you could have an instance where an employee, say, is caught stealing from you. So you have him fired. That person immediately goes to the press and claims malfeasance, wrongdoing, false accusation, because they were the one who actually did wrong, and they know that the media is going to want to eat it all up. So there's my bias. I'm like, when I see this and I see that statement, I'm like...
Or maybe the people you know are just pieces of shit. Like... That's all I really have to say about that. It's just, again, Tim does this thing where he always tries to, I mean, it's not just him. There's other people who do this too, who, they like to spin the story of, here's these people that I know. And they always say, like, this stuff happens, but, like, I don't know. We're just going to go forward.
Been there, done that. They know that what they would end up getting in family law would be lower than what they want. So they want to employ a PR strategy to damage Steven Crowder's public persona, knowing he can't do much to fight back, and it's going to cost him money to force him into settling. Dirty games.
But it's not force the
You
what?
don't get into more extreme dirty games than divorce. I mean, all the
Fair
gloves
point.
come off, and it's really ugly.
We're going to speed this
I
up
am
a little bit.
extremely fortunate that my divorce was not ugly. We didn't have kids.
I knew it! I fucking knew it. He's got the look. I can tell. I can see it in his eyes. I can see the divorce court in his eyes.
You see, that's the other thing. Is it's the idea that kids are involved is just it's really disturbing.
Yeah, because if you got kids, nobody's going to be like, I don't care what happens to the kids. It was real easy for me to be like, you take that stuff, leave my stuff alone, see ya, right? Like, it was totally cool, totally amicable. But obviously, if there's kids involved, you're like, well, I love my kids. I want to see my kids. And then people will start using their kids against the other one. And it degrades and gets so ugly so fast.
And it all becomes about the parents, ultimately. It just becomes a push and shove battle between them for the most part. And
It is really crazy, the stories I've heard about divorce, like especially in response to this. I think Mike Cernovich had a post where he was like, you'll see two people arguing over who gets to keep a house that neither wants, neither will live in, and isn't even worth anything to sell, just because they hate each other so much.
Yep.
Crazy stories I've heard where an ex-wife will demand the dog and then kill the dog as soon as she gets it.
Oh, God.
What? What is wrong with you? Like, first of all, like, he's trying to make that seem like that's a regular, like, that's the average divorce experience. Yeah, divorce is messy, but no one kills. But making it seem like, oh yeah, women just want to take something and destroy it. That's it. Like, no.
Dude, I've heard personal stories from people I know where it's like they demanded the cats in the divorce and then put them down instantly.
Sure. Do you have evidence of that? Because that's a pretty wild claim. Just trying to use this probably made up story. I'm gonna be honest. This probably made up story, just making it seem like this is what usually happens in divorce.
Like just because they hate
Just
you.
out of spite.
Yeah.
TOS
I'm like, "Jeez."
violations. Terrible things I'm thinking. You can't do that to a living animal. And
right there with you, Phil.
Well,
And
so
again,
bad.
or if that did happen, does that? I don't know. We're
Here's
just
what you were saying earlier
forward.
about respecting people who can work out their differences. This comes down to that. I mean, unfortunately, some marriages are not going to last. They're going to end in divorce. But people who can actually have a commitment to it and try and work it out, I respect them a lot more. I just think there's too many people out there now that look at marriage as like a temporary thing that I can just dissolve at any point in time. And I'm gonna
Dating
flip a
extra.
switch. And
Yeah.
it's time to swipe right.
Well,
you know?
it's a
And I don't
generational
think that's.
thing.
But
I blame Reagan.
Yeah.
Reagan's the no-fault
No
divorce.
fault
guy.
divorce, right? But like my grandparents' generation, that wasn't really a thing. You know, if anything, like my grandparents got divorced, but they were in their 70s. You know, like you know, in the generation that predates them, like that just wasn't something that was a possibility. They just worked it out, and they lived together and hated each other, but they still had 13 kids. You know, and they
Yeah, and you think that's a healthy relationship to have? Do you think that's a good thing for two people who have multiple children to just hate each other?
passed on some sort of worthwhile values instead of just saying, no, I'm out and I hate you. Give me the dog. You keep this. You know, just going through this whole process.
We gotta
It's
get
insane.
rid. We gotta get rid of no-fault divorce.
Yeah.
And then people say, yeah, but what about false accusations? And it's like, you know, we had this argument about abortion with Seamus, and Seamus says, yes, if you ban abortion, there will be back alley abortions. There will still be less abortions. It's like, what do you do? People are going to commit crimes. It doesn't mean you don't stop. You don't say this should be illegal or something. Not to start an abortion argument, but when it comes to no-fault divorce, people say, yeah, but then the wife will just falsely accuse the man. And it's like, perhaps. But the issue here with like Crowder and Hiliary.
Well, I like how even like if they get rid of no fault divorce, women are, from what they are saying, women are still going to make up some bullshit. Like they obviously just don't like women. They're obviously just big, sexist. Because like, oh, even if we get rid of no fault divorce, the women, women still be crazy. It's basically what they're saying.
You have kids. You've entered into a covenant. You have sworn till you die. I think a judge should be like, you both need to calm down. You both are responsible. You both have kids. You will not yell in front of these kids. You are responsible for this family, and we are going to be, keeping track to make sure that you're not, acting in violation. Otherwise, don't get married. The idea that we just made it so marriage could be dissolved instantly because
Oh yeah, you know how when you get into a relationship, you know exactly how it's going to end. This is coming from a guy has he ever he's single, right? I'm pretty sure there's a real infamous clip of Tim Pool talking about his relationship status, but it was a while ago, so I'm not sure how much that changed recently. Of him being like, I have problems dating women, but it's not. But the problems aren't with me. It's with women in general.
See that I'm about to be 34 and I have no family because my dad had 2 kids by the time he was 27.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, you know what the problem is though? It's definitely not me. I think it's everybody else.
Why should anyone take any sort of relationship advice, especially marriage advice, from this dude?
The easy way out is the stupidest thing. With no fault divorce,
Why should they take advice from a panel of 5 divorced dads? Well, probably at least we know this guy, the one in white, is definitely divorced for sure. Why should we be taking advice from these people?
marriage no longer exists.
Yeah, these are the guys I'm going to go to ask for marriage advice and whether or not divorce should be allowed or not.
When no fault divorce came out, it was much harder to get any type of actually evidence against your spouse. So fabricating stuff, and it was also hard to defend yourself. All right, look at Nathan Wade and his cell phone tracking records with Fonnie Willis. Now there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. So the argument that you need no fault divorce because you couldn't prove anything or couldn't defend yourself isn't there anymore, because now there's just a lot more ways to prove where you were at, who you were talking to. The fault should be something that can be easily determined and defended against now. So maybe there's not as much utility for that.
I don't know, man.
I like the concept of making some way. I like the concept of incentivizing people to work out the relationship. If no fault divorce,
To me, this is just so fucking stupid. People obviously people work it out. People will there are a lot more cases of people trying to work things out. But when it comes to their marriage, divorce just doesn't happen like that. And maybe it does in some very rare cases, but for the most time, people do try to work things out. You just don't see that process because you're not involved with these people's personal lives like you shouldn't be. But the thing is, people like Tim Pool, people like this guy, they just so desperately want to be injected into people's personal lives, which is why, it's just so weird. Why do you care that much about, no fault divorce being a thing?
goes away and that does it, fine. I don't have any particular love for any policy. I am sympathetic to the people that make the arguments that say, look, there are people that are going to be victimized because of this, that there will be negative externalities that happen. But like Tim said, that does happen with every single policy the government passes, no matter what it is. It can be something as innocuous as, I don't know, it could be something very small, but still have ramifications that spread through the economy and have negative effects in people's lives, and you'll never realize it. So that being said, I do think that, like I said, there should be some kind of way to incentivize what you want society to do. You want society to get married and have kids. That's what you, if there is a role for government, if government is legitimate, promoting families that make more.
So this, this right side of like these right wing media figures, basically their whole rule is we don't want government intruding on our personal rights, but we want them to incentivize people to get married and have kids. Like, shouldn't your policy, if you actually believe the things you say, should be like, yeah, people can get divorced. Like, obviously we want people to get married, but if they want to get divorced, and if they don't want to get married, who cares? If you're so much of like, the government should be involved in people's personal lives, I don't know. That's just, God, like, they're just very much being hypocrites of their whole ideology right here.
Or of the society in what would be considered traditional families.
People should be able to do whatever they want with their lives, but they shouldn't get divorced. They shouldn't get divorced. They have to stay in their abusive marriages.
That should be a role of the government. The government should not be in the business of looking for
we're just
centering the margins is the word that the left uses.
Yeah, we're just on end it right here, at least with this video. But then we have the actual video. We have Steven Crowder, not even Steven Crowder's response to this, his henchman's response to this, and we're just gonna kind of, I don't know if we probably won't watch the entire thing. I'm gonna speed this up to like 1.5. Then we'll just we'll just play like right here.
Okay. Well before any video that was released, we were going to do this show this way. I'll get to why Steven's not here in just a minute.
Spoiler alert, he never gets to why Steven's not there. But yeah, apparently, like Steven, I guess, was originally going to co-host this despite what I'm not entirely sure. It just seems pretty ironic, pretty funny that as soon as this video hit, Steven just wasn't there to host the show anymore.
But it was planned from a week ago, not from yesterday. I just want to say off the top that none of this had to happen. None of it. Didn't have to be this way at all. We didn't choose this. It was chosen for us. In fact, as I'll tell you in just a few minutes, we went to great lengths to give people the ability to do the right thing, to honor their agreements, and to do what they said they were going to do.
Which we saw with Jared explaining the season this stuff going on. That's what he's talking about there. Basically, he's saying we really harassed them into not talking about this stuff. That's what we
Unfortunately, they chose a different path. For the last year and a half, everything you've seen in the public eye has been part of a well-orchestrated plan.
Of course, they're falling on the line of they're trying to cancel us or whatever. I did pre-watch this. Like I said, I was watching the Surf Times. He was talking about this, so we're probably not gonna play all of this. But like, the feel that I got when I was watching this was I feel like they had something planned out for Steven, and then Steven got cold feet and ran. And I don't know, it's just like the way that he talks. It makes me feel like he's definitely reading something that was meant for Steven. That's just my little theory. It doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of this. It's just something I wanted to point out.
What is that plan? To assimilate damaging PR assets and wage a negative publicity campaign against Steven. I'll show you the quotes. I'll show you the text messages. I'll show you everything. All of the stuff that we did not talk about because we were giving people the opportunity to do.
This guy does have an entire thread about it. Again, he's just playing defense for Crowder because Crowder's too much of a coward to actually talk about this on his own. Yeah, there's an entire thread here. He also posted the full thing on Twitter. It's just, it's not a great situation. Oh my God. Actually, you know what? We'll have to talk about this. We'll have to talk about that.
Do the right thing. Taking the hits.
I almost forgot about
taking
that.
the hit pieces. Dealing with all of it. To give people the opportunity to do the right thing. They chose not to. I wonder why Jared decided to release his video yesterday. Just for some backstory, there had been no communication between our attorneys for a couple of weeks, so there was no impetus for it. The document compelling him to give a deposition had already expired on March 15th. So when he released his video yesterday, He asked you to contribute money for a lawsuit that did not exist, unless he's had a lawsuit that he would like to file, which he indicated maybe that was the case. We had not sued Jared. We simply asked Jared to knock it off. I'll get into the timeline of that. But Tuesday, March 26th was the day that he chose to release his video. I wonder if it had anything to do with Wednesday, March 27th being the 5th day of mediation between Stephen and Hiliary. Why release it the day before mediation? Mediation is a great opportunity for people to come together and resolve their differences peacefully.
He's trying to make this all seem like, oh, this is a planned out attack between Hiliary and Jared, or he did this on purpose. I believe he even said it was like March 22nd. He got like a cease and desist or something. I'm not exactly sure where it was in the video. I believe he said it was recently. He got like another like cease and desist or something like that.
I received the latest article of legal harassment on Friday, March 22nd, 2024. After a month now of litigation exhausting even the court with relentless amendments to their Rule 202 petition, my ex-employer was finally awarded their request for my oral deposition and any document of communication with my...
It's probably because, and this was kind of released on like March 27th, as he talked about, he probably just like was like, all right, well, enough is enough. I'm gonna fight back. And it just so happened to be at this time that he sent out the video. Like, he lays it out plainly, like, it was recently, and that was probably the final straw for him, and he was like, all right, I'm gonna talk about this. Like, it doesn't, like, they're trying to make it seem like it was a planned attack when it was probably just him being like, I'm just fucking done with this. Again, we're not gonna watch this entire video. I do want to end it on a pretty funny, I think it's pretty funny, situation involving a yam.
Make sure nobody knows where he lives. Hiliary intentionally doxed it. I won't use the exact words, you can see it in the image, but it's evil.
So, Crowder got a threatening yam, and apparently this comes from like a text message. I want to at them that he actually lives at, and then the address, so leave this house alone. He doesn't live there. Ha 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 ha. And it's a yam that says, watch it, fucking watch it. A poke holes wrapped in paper. I don't even know what that fully says.
After Jared.
But yeah, Yam is now involved with this. And I believe it's not even true that... like, the whole yam situation, there's even an article about it. Scared of a potato, Steven Crowder's divorce now revolves around a threatening message inscribed on a yam. Right-wing commenter Steven Crowder's divorce dominated internet discussion since last year, but it is a threatening message he says he received described on a yam that is actually taking the cake. Crowder last year revealed that his wife Hiliary filed for a no-fault divorce, telling his audience, "My then-wife decided she didn't want to be married anymore in the state of Texas that is completely permitted." Soon after the announcement, a Ring video from the 2021 circulated online of Crowder berating his wife, who was 8 months pregnant at the time. And also, this has nothing to do with the whole yam situation right now. Crowder was not present when his children were born. For whatever reason, he says, I believe he says it was due to a medical thing, but I kind of doubt that because he uses like medical issues as like an excuse to back out of situations all the time. That's what he initially used when he wanted to back out of a debate between him and Sam Cedar. Or I believe it was like when Ethan Klein was trying to set up the debate behind Crowder's back. Steven realized that Sam Cedar ended his show at around the same time that he was going to start his interview with Ethan. So he backed out and said that there was a problem with his wife, who was pregnant at the time. So yeah, that just goes to add like why this guy shouldn't be around his children. Crowder was once again Crowder has once again come into the limelight on social media after an ex-staffer of his on Tuesday claimed he fostered a toxic and abusive work environment and subjected him to years of legal abuse after his departure from the company. Jared said in a video posted to X that his former employer is exploiting the legal system to abuse others right now, and requested help with his legal fees to get him out the NDA. Monroe's request received the backing of Hiliary Crowder, who called him a good man, great father, and a loyal husband. Anyone who has been on the other side of legal abuse like this knows how financially and emotionally devastating it can be. Louder with Crowder addressed the allegations from Monroe on Wednesday and claimed he had coordinated with Hiliary to destabilize Steven Crowder through a negative PR campaign. That alleged coordination between the two is where the threatening him comes in. Hiliary sent a private and unlisted residential address to Jared, a Louder with Crowder CEO said on X. Shortly after Jared received Steven Crowder's personal address, Steven received this threatening message. Crowder also filed a suit accusing Monroe of participating in an extortion scheme with Hiliary Crowder, according to court records obtained by SCNR. Monroe jumped at the opportunity to help her with the extortion scheme in violation of his agreement. Probably because he just fucking hates the guy. Probably because this guy has been screwing with him just because he wanted to leave the company. Of being like, yeah, I'll support you. I'm also a victim of his fucking abuse. Like, yeah, people who tend to be victims of a certain person are pretty likely to kind of get together to support one another. Like, that's not uncommon. That's just human fucking emotion. Sympathy for another person. The threatening message scribbled onto the side of a sweet potato repeats the same words. I can't take that seriously. Scribbled onto the side of a sweet potato repeats the same words Crowder was caught saying on the Ring camera footage. Watch it, fucking watch it, in addition to directions on how to heat it up in the microwave. Okay, so that's what that was. Steven Crowder divorce drama exploding on right-wing Twitter today, where we learned that the court record features a threatening yam sent to Crowder. The image of the vegetable captivated social media, with many users hitting at Crowder for feeling threatened. If Steven Crowder is submitting a yam with his own words written on it as proof he's being threatened, does that mean he acknowledges those words were a threat that he said when he said them to his wife? Which is I very much share almost that kind of mentality with this. Like, I honestly do not believe that it is true. I don't believe that it's actually, first of all, we don't know the actual address, obviously, because just in case of doxing, of what exactly she said. So it could just literally be Steven being like, well, I'm just gonna forge this, make it seem like they're threatening me with a yam. I don't know. It's just so weird and disgusting. I don't know if the yam is all that threatening. Maybe it's a fan of Crowder and is simply quoting its idol for the meme. Has the yam been interviewed about its actual intent yet? Okay, that's good. And this is, we kind of saw this right here, the Tim cast thing. Someone quote retweeted this. Narrator: Tim doesn't know what actually is going on and is defending a fellow grifter. Wait, you don't agree with Tim and Crowder that receiving a potato in the mail is a threat on your life? Yeah, like, just so, I don't know. It's such a bad look for Crowder. I honestly don't believe the threatening yam is true. I highly doubt that. Also, why would they put a description on how to heat it up on the yam? Like, yeah, this just seems like it's Crowder just trying to look for anything. And I guess the first thing he saw was a yam, so he was just like, I got it. I don't know. It's just, God. Such a bad look for him, honestly. But I think that's all we're going to really cover about this situation. I mean, I've been covering it for over an hour now. Almost an hour and a half. Jesus. Yeah, we're just going to kind of end it off here. At least with the Steven Crowder scandal going on, the drama. Obviously, I'm on the side of Hiliary and Jared. Like, Steven Crowder just continues to show over and over. Also, a point that I didn't get to with the Louder Crowder video is that they do bring up like the previous accusations of, them being very inappropriate. And Jared very briefly talks about that a little bit. Like, I think he just alludes to it. But they said something, Gerald, the Steven Crowder stand-in for the time, he said something along the lines of Jared would expose himself to Steven and only in a way that only Steven would be able to see. And it's such, like, they're doing it. Obviously what they're doing is making up, they're lying. But they know that, like, if they were just to come out and say, oh, Jared exposed himself to Steven, there would probably be, former co-workers, former employees who would come out and be like, I never saw anything along the lines of that. So they have to, like, specify it in a way of being like, no, it was only in a way that Steven could see. And if that was the case, why didn't Steven fire him? If that was true, why didn't he face any, punishment for that? Like, it's just weird. It just goes to show that they're trying anything and everything to cover their own ass with this whole situation because they know it looks bad on them. Even at the time, which is why they did the whole NDA thing. Like, it's just really gross what they're doing here. Steven Crowder, to no one's surprise, continues to be a horrible, horrible person. So yeah, big shocker there. Yeah, we're just like...